Stories podcast. My name is Abe Zapata Jr., and I was the workshop facilitator for the 2019 Eastside Queer Stories Workshop. I'm excited to be with one of our magnificent playwrights from the cohort, and I will let them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Audrey Kuo. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the writer of Every Story is a Love Story.
Thank you for being here today, Audrey. And we're just going to jump right into it. So the first question I always ask is, what kind of writing had you done before attending the ESQS workshop?
So prior to applying, I think I primarily considered myself a poet, and probably other people who've seen my work also think that too, because I do write flash fiction, don't really publish it, and have kind of shied away from longer form fiction because I struggle with dialogue, which is interesting because then play is almost all dialogue.
It's funny that you say that, because I do actually think the dialogue is the strongest part of the play. So to hear you say that is a little confounding.
I had a really great workshop facilitator, so I think it was definitely that. And I had never really tried before because I think it seemed overwhelming as a form, but I had so much fun. Actually, that's not true. I wrote plays in middle school and high school, but I think I just didn't consider myself seriously as a playwright until having the opportunity and trying it again as an adult.
That's awesome, because even like Cesar, this was like their second play. And then from the last cohort with Edwin, Alexis, Gómez, who wrote Flower of Anger, they were primarily a poet, and then Flower of Anger was their first like published play and everything. So it's exciting to have all these new playwrights. We just need the opportunities, is the obvious thing. For such a short play, Alex and Jess feel like fully rounded characters. When you started the process, did you already have these two in mind, or did they evolve as you wrote the play?
So the funny part about this is that when I applied to the workshop, I wrote that I was tired of seeing tragic queer trans stories and I wanted to write about trans and queer joy. And then our first exercise, which you remember because you assigned it, was creating a monologue. And I wrote Alex's monologue, which is the first scene of the play. And then I was ready to set it aside so I could write happy stories. But everyone else in the workshop was like, I think you should keep going with these characters. So in a sense, I feel like they kind of existed and I was just creating a space for them to emerge. And I think they feel so fully rounded because I'm drawing from young folks I know, as well as their friendship feels really similar to how I build with my community. So I think they're really pulling from the best of what I love about work, like young people I know, and then the best of what I see in queer friendships.
Because it's been a long time since I've been in high school, since I've been a young person. Do you have any like kind of comments about these two characters creating their community in this like high school that you've created, or even like the influences of young folks that you work with and how that influence this world?
Yeah, I think young people are amazing. I think that's always been true. And also the generations of young folks now have so much access to information, which is both wonderful in terms of, trans students in high schools might be one of only a handful or the only trans student at their school. So being able to connect digitally is a huge deal. And also have access to information about their identities. For example, I didn't know about asexuality until my late 20s. And I think I would have figured out so many things about my life earlier if I'd had access to that information. So there's a lot of that, but then there's also the pressure, I think, that comes with, I'm saying purity politics, and I want to expound on it more, but I know this is like not an hour-long interview. I think there's a little bit of a trap of feeling like young people have to present their identities in a perfect way. And there's a lot of pressure that social media creates while it also presents community. I think it creates a lot of pressure to be queer or trans in a right way, quote unquote, that is really difficult. And then the other amazing thing about the connectedness is that they're able to find and build community and really practice things like consent, which you see between Alex and Jess, or organize, which has also always been possible with young people, but there's a way of information sharing that's possible now that is totally different. And then I think the dark humor that's coming out of young people right now is like, I don't think I even fully captured that, and because me writing it as an adult would be weird, but young people are so funny. And I think it's one of the things that I wanted to uplift with the play, but don't feel like I fully captured.
Yeah, that's a difficult balancing act because you're writing for young people, but then there is like a language within young people that even I don't fully understand. And I see these social media folks create these like really intricate 30-second videos, and I just don't even understand how they edited that together. And yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I do think there is like a nice cynicism in their talking and their sarcasm and their wit that you did capture nicely, I think.
Thank you.
So that's there. Yeah. So I think that was captured nice. And I think you have a little bit, I mean, we have some time to talk about, so you mentioned purity politics. What did you mean by that?
I'm using the phrase cancel culture with a really big caveat that it's an expression that I don't think fully, it's trying to encapsulate too much, right? Like someone who is in a position of power and has committed sexual assault should be canceled, but what we call canceling is they're not actually canceled. Like they still get speaking engagements, etc. But then a 14-year-old like accidentally saying something that is transphobic as they're figuring out their own trans identity also like can actually get canceled and bullied on the internet, sometimes by adults. And I think that it creates a fear of genuine exploration of their own identity. And I'm not excusing racism or misogyny or anti-Blackness and the ways in which teenagers can also perpetuate oppression. But I think there's a huge difference in terms of power. And part of that translates into young people feeling like it's not okay to explore their identities because of fearing being the wrong kind of way. And I think the other thing that happens is when all of our discourse is online and we're not really engaging in deep solidarity building, I see, and this is more like, I've seen this more with 20-year-olds and also consider a lot of 20-year-olds my peers, but this idea of emotional labor and feeling like every time you ask someone for emotional labor, you need to compensate them feels really transactional. And I think it comes from online discourse about emotional labor, but it was never intended to be like, if I tell my friend I'm having a bad day, I owe them a cup of coffee. It was about acknowledging the unpaid labor of pink collar workers. And that I think online has transformed into something really weird where younger queer folks, and I think even people in my generation, I'm in my mid 30s, are afraid to tell people they're having a bad day because they're afraid of burdening one another. And it really cuts at our ability to build community with each other because we're so afraid of overburdening, when really it's about boundary practices, setting limitations, being able to find ways to ground, but it's really deepening our investment in each other that allows us to break past that. And I think it is one of the downsides of digital only queer culture.
Yeah, no, and I think, yeah, it's fascinating because we just had a CEO harass young people about wearing a dress. And yeah, that CEO was fired, but I'm sure they got a wonderful severance package, as opposed to like a young person online who did not articulate something correctly. And that's tricky because I didn't have that. I had a flip phone in high school, so nobody was seeing the mess I was being at that time, thankfully.
Wait, why are you wearing shoes in my bedroom?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I had shoes on. I wasn't even wearing this outfit when... I'm not sure they're really, real. Do you think I'm tracking, ghost dust and germs around your room?
I don't know, take it off. It's still gross.
Okay, calm down, Aries Rising.
And I can't believe you made me throw a book, an Octavia Butler.
Sorry to interrupt your apocalypse prepper reading.
What I appreciate about the play is how nerdy some of the references are. And I think we did talk about this a little bit in the workshop. It was 2019, so forgive me if I don't remember everything exactly. But I would love to know if you can do magic, A, and B, do you love Star Wars?
I think I appreciate Star Wars. I was Asians for Black Lives in the Bay was rewatching the entire series, and I was like, this is so cool. I can bond with those folks and rewatch the movies. And I was like, yeah, I'm not interested anymore. And I think they're interesting storytelling, but a lot of it just has not held up to time for me personally. I still appreciate the building of the universe, and I like the idea of young people like calling things like Star Wars really old movies, including the new ones, which is why I threw that in. And I've had multiple young people cast in this play not understand the references. So that's really interesting. As to magic, I would say I can't do sleight of hand, but as a trans person and a gender fluid person, I feel like I'm doing magic all the time. And I think the part I relate to most about Alex is I feel like he does magic because he likes delighting people. And like, you know, the piece about being a magician is being able to shift things. So there's like a trans narrative in that, and then also providing delight and joy to people. And I highly identify with that piece of Alex's personality.
Nice. Yeah. So there's a nice duality there with the character of Alex and wanting to delight people, but also not fitting into this world, which really kind of tugs at the heart of the play. Did you want to speak a little bit about that? Or
I think in writing Alex, I understood myself as a trans elder for the first time, which this was 2019. So I was 33. And I think since my late 20s have been treated as an elder by younger queer folks, which is weird. I was like, I'm in my mid 20s. And part of that is, you know, the state has allowed our elders to die through the HIV AIDS crisis, our first pandemic. It's happening again now, through all the forms of structural oppression that mean that we don't have elders. But writing Alex actually made me feel older and feel the grief of losing trans little siblings who I may not get the chance to meet, and knowing also that we're losing trans young people whose names we don't know because they're not being honored as their true selves in death.
Working with folks like Yen and Christy over in Afterlife or Bust, I was treated a little bit like an elder, and I didn't realize my role in their lives, even if it's just through Zoom and emails, that it was like, oh, that they see me a certain way, and it is my responsibility to create the space so that they can act and learn and mess up. And so that was kind of weird, because I wasn't expecting to start feeling that way at this age, because I'm 32. And so I was like, oh, I'm already being treated like, you know, I'm the Yoda for the Star Wars reference.
Bringing it back to Star Wars, which we're kind of fans of. And I think what's interesting is I've learned more about Alex from the actors who play Alex, and really vulnerable first conversations with directors and after casting where they talk about what they relate to in terms of Alex's personality. I think from the magic to one of the Alexes talked about how lovely it was to get to play a trans person and be desired, because they hadn't had that in a theater opportunity before.
That's interesting. Yeah. And Andi does a wonderful job in this version. And I am going to segue a little bit, because the play is dealing with some serious subject matter, and we've kind of hinted at it a little bit, but I don't think the play ever victimizes or patronizes. And I think because all of these plays are written from our POVs, that's why the plays don't feel like, what is that movie with Matthew McConaughey? I don't know. I could list a whole bunch of movies with straight men, you know, playing these characters that have no business being it. But for any young listeners out there who might have found this play and relate to Alex or Jess, do you have any advice?
This is the part where I admit that Abe sent me the questions ahead of time, and I got this question. I was like, I can't answer that. I know there's so much anti-trans legislation out there, and I think the solution that Alex and Jess have is finding each other and finding the friendships that are an anchor and safety point for them. I think organizing can be an answer, but it's not fair to tell young people like the only solution is to build our liberation. But that's what the trans adults and trans elders in my life, the queer folks that I build with, are doing. I actually wrote a poem because I couldn't figure out how else to answer that question. I'm just going to read it.
Yeah, I would love to hear.
Cool. I'm sorry I don't have an answer yet. And I'm sorry I wrote you a play about death. And I'm sorry that we haven't fixed it yet. And we're trying, but I'm sorry. And I'm trying not to say it gets better, because fuck Dan Savage. And also right now, it kind of feels like it might be getting worse. But have I told you yet about organizing and hope as a discipline, and the magic of queer femme love, and what it's like to look at yourself in the mirror and feel joyful and free and alive, and about interdependence and disability justice and the laughter at the trans support space and the perfect shirt that fits like coming home to your body, yourself, to you. I know it's not fair and I'm sorry, and it's so much to ask, but please hold on. We're looking for you.
Thank you, Audrey. And I think that beautiful sentiment of I don't have the answers, but in each other, you'll find something that I was lucky enough to find, that it sounds like you were lucky enough to find, that helped us survive. And, you know, I have a cousin that I only know his name. His name was Tommy. I know he died of AIDS, but they always said he died of cancer. But there's like this weird disconnect of this generation that I just don't know. Mm-hmm. And so we're lucky enough to be with these young people, and it's not even that much of an age difference. But if we can create a space for them and let them grow and not talk down to them and not, you know, the way that, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, millennials this, we can't do that to this next generation. And so I'm also glad that they're really funny and also make fun of us all the time. I've seen those TikToks.
Yeah, I'm friends with a 21-year-old who just, once they figured out the elder jokes made me uncomfortable, just super leaned into it. And I'm just growing to appreciate it. You know, I know they're teasing me and I know that it's part of the trolling, but also I'm like, this friendship brings me so much joy. And it's an honor to be an elder to that person because they're so amazing.
I'm sorry, Jess. I'm so sorry. I wanted to. I really, really wanted to. I think it's why I'm here right now. I know it's not enough, but I'm here now, okay? I'm listening. I didn't want to hurt you.
I know this isn't about me. That you would never hurt me on purpose. But it still hurts, okay? It hurts every single day, and you're not here, and it fucking sucks.
So any favorite lines or moments from the play that you would like to share?
I think my favorite line is when Jess says to Alex, "You ghosted me," because it's such an Alex line for Jess to be like, there's all this emotional tension. I just told you stuff you don't want to hear. And now I'm going to make a joke. And then Alex still one-ups them by taking it seriously, and Jess just freaks out. And every Jess has played it differently, but I just love that Jess tries and then immediately freaks out, and then they go back to their banter, and there's these moments where they almost get to fall back into the way it was. And so I think there's some wish fulfillment for both of them in like, oh, what if it was just still like this, even though one of us is no longer in the same spiritual plane?
Oh, well, yeah, that makes that line hit a little different. Sorry, you made me start thinking like a facilitator, and I was like, oh, interesting. And then I wanted to take notes, but I'm like, oh wait, we're not workshopping the play anymore. But yeah, it's beautifully said. So that is actually something that you've had the chance, and some of our playwrights did, that you actually have seen the play performed a few times. Can you tell us a little bit of that experience and hearing the play read out loud by the actors and what that was like for you?
Every time I've heard someone playing Alex relate to understanding why Alex might want to die has been really difficult to just know that that's true. And also I think it's part of why this play is important. I don't really envision it as a standalone play. I really think that if people are going to put this play on in high schools, I want it to come with talkbacks and workshops and conversations about all of the themes that the play talks about mental health, about suicide, about what it means to exist as a trans young person and not have full agency over your body. So I think I've learned from the young people who are playing it just what it means to embody that. I wasn't really out in high school, mostly because I didn't know these parts of my identities yet. So I've learned a lot from them just about what it means to exist in that space. And also just every person brings something different to it. And what I was kind of the beginning of an idea when I was writing this play, but has become more clear through seeing it put on, I think 4 times now, is I want the play to feel affirming for the actors. So that means if there's lines that don't make them feel good gender-wise, we change them. And then the favorite dish that Jess refers to, I think, I'm not sure what the dish is in this version of the play, but that changes based on the favorite dish of the actor who plays Alex. The curly locks comment is based on the first Alex, but we've changed it to like your long hair, your fluffy hair, based on what feels good. And I think I want for the actors to either feel like this is the most affirming gender role I've ever played, or this is a gender I haven't gotten to explore yet as an actor. And let's create something that reflects your identities. And the type of Asian that Jess is also shifts based on what the actor wants to embody. So sometimes they'll pull a line from something their mom has actually said, and then they'll also adapt the accent if they feel comfortable and not mocking to do an Asian accent. Then they're often pulling from their own families. Or they can also choose, like, I don't want to mock my parents' accent. I'm just going to deliver it in my same voice. But I think that agency within the script feels really core to how I want this play to feel for both the actors and the audience, to feel like it's really about and for and to them and the experience of watching it live, as opposed to my vision. It's about creating this sense of what does it feel to be in this, and to share the consent and the joy and the love and the way that these two characters show up for each other. I'm hoping that the actors feel that the script shows up for them too.
And I love that idea of it's very much like making theater very active within the actors themselves. And, there's some, and words get thrown out and stuff, but there's like this idea of conscious casting and really taking into account the actors that you're hiring. So like, for example, I'm Mexican American, and I write a lot of Latinx characters, but the actors aren't always Mexican American. So we shift depending on where they're from, their personal slang. So I do love that about the piece and how it's evolved. And and I hate the word canon. I don't like using that word, but I do imagine that one day it's gonna be like a canonical piece in like queer studies 101 courses or something. So I do envision that for you in this piece. And I love the idea of making it an active theater piece where afterwards there's workshops and talkbacks. And yes, that's wonderful. And somebody give Audrey money and
love that.
And let them tour this around, because that'd be awesome.
Hi, I'm Ana Bernal, Executive Director and founder of Q Youth Foundation. I wanted to give a special thanks to our listeners worldwide. And if you have enjoyed our ESQS series, please consider making a donation to Q Youth. We are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to building creative and brave spaces for the LGBTQIA+ community. Check out our website at www.qyouthfoundation.org to learn more about us and donate to support our programming. Thank you.
What did you gain or learn from being a part of the ESQS workshop?
I think so many things from the workshop. One, just having a writing community, and I'd never written a play before, or not in a serious, like, this is a play that's going to get produced way. So it was just so amazing to be around people who had more theater experience while trying this totally new thing. A fun, unexpected thing was that I loved reading other people's scripts and acting. And I remember when we went to our first reading, I saw an actor and I was like, oh, that's the hot guy in Prep, which is Danny's play. And I could just tell by looking, like, that's the hot guy. And I was talking to Brandon and we're like, this is our life goal, to be typecast as hot guy. And then Noah, who wrote What to Do When You're Caught in the Middle of a Wildfire, wrote a film script, I think, for the next Q Youth workshop, and then cast me as the dumb hot guy in his play. And I was like, my himbo dreams are being like realized. And so I also just really love that there's still a community and folks keep casting me as just like side characters, because it's been really fun to explore and to audition for like every single gender and just be like, I can play anything because I'm a shapeshifter, because I'm trans. And yeah, I just really loved meeting people, learning from you, and getting to be in a feedback process with other folks.
Working on any other projects at the moment?
I've been writing poetry for National Poetry Month, and I'm working on a chapbook with the subtitle Oriental Poetry, which is a joke about every single prompt for the chapbook is like a stereotype of a poem. So I have like a trans poem about Mulan, and like a poem about the ocean and migration, hopefully the poems themselves are not cliche, but the point is that the prompts should be a little bit cliche about what you might expect from a trans Chinese poet. So it's called Mangosteen Poem, which was based on me saying like every immigrant has a mango poem, which I have insulted several friends by saying, because then they got this quiet, they got like really quiet. I was like, oh, sorry, you probably have a mango poem. I have a mango poem, it's fine. And then something that was really interesting was the beginning of this year, I took a dance intensive. So I've been thinking about storytelling just more broadly and trying to tell the same story through a bunch of different forms. So I'm not sure what that will look like yet, but roughly conceptually, there's a piece called Form is Content about exploring the line between form, content, and my own trans disabled body through movement, poetry, essays, maybe visual art, and also exploring the idea of some of our stories are just for us. So far that has only been shared with like 6 friends. And it's been really interesting to think about performance that is not really public facing, but is still art that is meaningful to me. And then me as a creator getting to really think about who I want to share my story with.
And I think that's a wonderful little pinpoint there of this idea of stories don't always need to be commodified and sold. And sometimes we just need to get them out and heard and within our own communities. And it doesn't matter Absolutely. How many people listen. I'm excited. And, where can people follow you so they can find out when all this stuff is happening and buy the chapbook and all that good stuff?
My public Instagram is Audrey Kuo. So AudreyKuo. Just forgot how to spell my own name. And my blog is audreykuo.wordpress.com. Both are not super frequently updated, but I did just make a link tree for this play dropping. So it's /Audrey Kuo. And the main link will be to this play. But also there's a Zoom version of this play. And I think it's really interesting to see the same play in different forms with different actors. So if you really just want to experience this play in multiple formats, you can find that on my link tree. And my blog is also linked there.
The wonderful thing about theater is that is what happens, that you experience the same thing. So Susan Laurie Parks does that a lot, where it's the same play, but there's totally different actors. And so it becomes a different play. And she does it more so like with race. But yeah, I think that's a wonderful thing. And so I'm sure that people will be excited to find all that. Link trees, a galore. You can check out Audrey's link tree. Our Q Youth link tree will also have all the links that you could possibly need. Any final words for the listeners out there, Audrey?
In case the part about drinking water gets cut, please do drink some water. And I think I've been trying to say this more as an artist, but the times that we are in, and with rising fascism and the onslaught of violence and state repression, it's asking us to be numb, because numbness is the same as cynicism. It leads to inaction and allows the existing power structures to continue. So I think the role of art and the role of all of us is to feel more deeply, to feel our anger at injustice, to feel our desire for liberation, to feel our love for our comrades and remember what we're fighting for. And so I hope that this play, though it may bring you to some hard feelings, creates space for you to feel deep grief, which is also our capacity to feel deep joy and deep love for each other, because that's what allows us to keep fighting and to remember what we're building toward.
Thank you. And I love that. Feel the grief, feel the anger, and sometimes also, I think, and kind of bring it back to the other point you made about not pressuring young people to organize. But if you are somebody with means, if you are capable and you can organize, and it's something that you're, or if there's an organization that we can highlight, please let us know about it, because we would love to highlight that, to work with whoever, and also just creating spaces for artists to deal with these emotions. I mentioned this in Noah's interview, but James Baldwin talks about being this observer, and it's so important that we have folks like you who are observing, and the output that you create is so varied, and you're much more loquacious than I am, and a little low-key jealous, and but thank you so much for being here and joining me today. It was really nice.
Yeah, it was really great to talk to you again too. I hope you get some water, and I'm really excited now that we've recorded to actually go hear the other plays too.
Awesome. So thank you for joining us for Eastside Queer Stories, and make sure to follow Audrey Kuo at Audrey Kuo on Instagram, audreykuo.wordpress.com, and there will be a link tree as well. And make sure to follow QU Foundation, please. We really could use it. And subscribe to our YouTube, please. That would actually really help us.
And give them money.
Oh my God, yes.
How do people donate?
Through PayPal and through the link tree. There will be a link to donate. Of course, I forgot to get myself water, which you always post about on social media, and they should be drinking water.
I'm hoping this doesn't get cut out, but yes, Abe is looking for water right now, and I just drank some in his face, and I do talk about drinking water all the time. Hydration is important.